7 governments right now in 2026 are advancing legislation to restrict how much of your money you're allowed to move across a border. They're not announcing it that way. They're calling it macro-prudential stabilization. But here's the translation. The borders aren't closing for people. They're closing for private wealth. And if you're watching this, there's a very good chance you have more to lose from that than you think. Here's what I want you to understand before we go 1 second further. In 2013, the government of Cyprus froze every bank account in the country overnight. Citizens woke up and found themselves legally locked out of their own savings. The government took a percentage, legally, and called it a bail-in. It was not illegal, it was policy. In 2022, Canada froze the bank accounts of peaceful protesters without a court order, within 48 hours of invoking emergency powers. No charges, no trial, just access revoked. And right now, 7 OECD nations are writing the legislation that makes that a standing power, not an emergency measure, a standard tool. That is what a closing border looks like. Not barbed wire, not a checkpoint, a digital and regulatory wall built specifically to keep private wealth trapped inside a jurisdiction that needs it more than you do. Now, before we build this together, I want to know where you stand. Drop it in the comments right now. Do you believe capital controls will hit a major Western economy within the next 5 years? Yes or no? I read every comment, and your answer tells me exactly what we need to cover next. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 things. 1. The liquidity shield, the legal architecture that keeps you liquid no matter what your government does. 2. A 3-tier jurisdiction map, exactly where each layer of your wealth belongs and why. 3. The specific hard assets that cross any border without a bank. 4. A 5-step execution sequence you can start today. And 5. The 4 red flag signals that mean the window is closing and it's time to move from planning to action. We don't follow the market, we design the moat. In a world of followers, we are the architects of our own freedom. That is the Wealth Forge standard. That is why you're here. Let's build. I want to say something that most financial advisors will never say to your face. Your home country is not your financial ally. It is a legal jurisdiction. And legal jurisdictions change their rules, especially when they're desperate. I know that's uncomfortable. I know that for many of you, the idea that the place where you've built your life, raised your family, paid your taxes for decades, that it could one day become the single greatest threat to your financial legacy is not an easy thing to sit with. That resistance you're feeling, that is exactly what the people who design these policies are counting on. Write this down. Argentina, Greece, Iceland, India, South Africa, Brazil, all of these governments deployed capital controls within the last 15 years. None of them announced it was coming more than 72 hours in advance. The post-pandemic debt cycle is reaching its critical phase. The United States is carrying over $36 trillion in federal debt. The UK, France, Japan, Canada, all operating at debt-to-GDP ratios that historically preceded one outcome: structural intervention into private capital. Capital controls, exit taxes, mandatory domestic investment requirements, wealth levies dressed up as solidarity contributions. The thing that financial planners will not say out loud is this: the next sovereign debt crisis in a major Western economy will not be solved by austerity alone. It will be solved at least partly by keeping your money inside borders that need it more than you do. That is the closing border. Not a wall, a digital and regulatory cage built quietly and legally over years, specifically designed for the moment the government needs what's in your accounts. So, what does the architect do with this? You stop treating your home country as your permanent financial sanctuary. You start treating it as one node with its own specific risk profile inside a deliberately designed, multi-jurisdictional wealth architecture. You never build a structure with a single point of failure. A house with one exit is not a home, it's a trap. Here is the concept that changes everything. Write it down: the liquidity shield. This is not offshore banking the way your grandfather understood it. That world, the secret Swiss account, the suitcase of cash, is gone, closed off by FATCA, the common reporting standard adopted by 100 countries, and global automatic information exchange agreements.
But here's what most people miss, and this is the insight that separates the architects from everyone else. The goal was never secrecy. The goal is access. Specifically, access that cannot be severed by a single government action. That is the liquidity shield. A multi-jurisdictional legal architecture, fully compliant, professionally structured, that ensures no matter what your domestic bank does, no matter what emergency powers are invoked, you still have liquid capital available somewhere outside their reach. In 2026, that architecture has two non-negotiable pillars. Pillar 1, non-custodial digital asset custody. A government can freeze a bank account because the bank is the custodian, and a court can order them to comply. A government cannot freeze a private cryptographic key because there is no custodian to serve the order to. You are the only authority. That structural legal asymmetry did not exist for private individuals before 2009. Most people with serious wealth still haven't integrated it. Pillar 2, Plan B residency, the legal trigger. This is the piece almost everyone skips and almost everyone regrets. In most jurisdictions, legally moving significant capital across borders requires established legal standing in the receiving jurisdiction before the crisis, not during, before. Without that standing, you're moving reactively, under pressure, during a panic, when legal fees triple and windows close. Panama, Paraguay, Portugal, UAE, and several Southeast Asian jurisdictions offer qualifying residency in 30 to 90 days, some for as little as $5,000 in deposit. But, and I want you to hear this clearly, Portugal's Golden Residency program closed its real estate pathway in 2023. That window is gone. Paraguay tightened documentation requirements in Q1 2026. These windows close. The architects who moved in 2021 locked terms that do not exist anymore. The liquidity shield is not built during a crisis. It is built before one, so that during one, you simply activate what's already in place. Now, let me give you the three-tier map, because strategy without geography is just philosophy, and philosophy doesn't protect your family's wealth. In a properly structured architecture, every dollar you own sits in one of three tiers. Tier 1, operational jurisdictions. This is where your money works. Low tax, deep banking infrastructure, rule of law, growing economy. In 2026, Singapore is the gold standard. No capital gains tax, a government that courts private wealth, Tier 1 banking access.
Dubai's DIFC is the leading competitor for anyone operating across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East simultaneously. For the Western Hemisphere, Panama's multinational headquarters regime provides structural advantages for global operating companies. Tier 2, storage jurisdictions. This is where your capital rests. Think of this as the vault. Politically neutral, historically stable, legal frameworks that specifically protect foreign-held assets against international seizure orders. Liechtenstein, 700-year tradition of private wealth protection, constitutional protections for foreign asset holders, some of the strongest trust law on earth. Cook Islands, arguably the strongest asset protection structure available in any common law jurisdiction. Switzerland's Geneva Freeport, still the gold standard for physical precious metals storage. Tier 3, corridor jurisdictions. These are the connectors. Georgia, the country, not the state, has become a standout in 2026. Zero capital gains for non-residents, territorial taxation, digital banking infrastructure that rivals Western systems, positioned between Europe and Asia, with genuine political independence from both blocs. Now, here is the most expensive mistake I see sophisticated investors make, and when you see it, you'll never unsee it. Owning property in France, gold in Germany, and a brokerage account in the Netherlands while living in the UK is not geographic diversification. It is the illusion of diversification inside a single political risk bubble. The European Union demonstrated in 2022 that it can coordinate emergency economic measures across all member states simultaneously. One decision, one block, one risk event. Your diversified European portfolio is not diversified, it is concentrated. Real diversification means at least one meaningful position that is legally, politically, and economically independent of your primary political bloc, not adjacent to it, independent. When you see the architecture that clearly,
It's actually simpler than it sounds. It's not about complexity, it's about deliberate design. I want to shift gears for a moment. Everything we've covered so far is architecture, legal structures, jurisdictions, banking relationships. Those things matter enormously. But architecture is only as strong as what's inside it. So let's talk about the instruments, what you actually hold and how you hold it. In 2026, portable wealth comes in 3 categories. Category 1, non-custodial digital assets, but not for the reason most people think. I'm not going to tell you to put your life savings in Bitcoin. I'm going to tell you this: a 5 to 15% allocation to Bitcoin in non-custodial cold storage with private keys split across multiple physical jurisdictions using a multi-signature structure creates something that has never existed in private wealth management before. A liquid, borderless emergency reserve that no court order, no government freeze, and no banking system failure can touch. You can carry the equivalent of $1 trillion across any border in the world in your memory. No customs, no declaration, no intermediary. That capability, as a proportional allocation inside a diversified architecture, is not speculation. It is the most powerful form of wealth insurance ever made available to private individuals. Category 2, physical commodity positions with international liquidity. Investment-grade gold bullion, specifically 400-ounce LBMA good delivery bars or 1-ounce sovereign coins, can be converted to cash in virtually every country on Earth within 24 hours through established dealer networks. No banking system required. This has been true through every financial crisis of the last century. But here's what's changed in 2026. The documentation is now as important as the metal. Provenance-verified, insured, properly custodied gold moves efficiently across borders. Undocumented gold is a liability in a regulatory environment that increasingly scrutinizes physical asset movements. Documentation is not bureaucratic overhead. It is what makes the asset liquid when you need it most. Category 3, pre-crisis currency conversion. This is the category where most people wait too long. The optimal moment to convert a meaningful portion of your domestic currency into international hard instrument is before the crisis is obvious, because the moment it becomes obvious, the cost of conversion explodes. What cost you 2% last year cost you 12% during a panic. Here's the number I want you to hold. Currency controls in modern economies have moved from announcement to full implementation in 48 to 72 hours. Argentina, 2001, overnight. India's demonetization, announced at 8 p.m., effective at midnight. Cyprus, announced Friday, implemented Monday. You do not have days to prepare during a crisis. You prepare now so that when the moment comes, you activate, you don't scramble. Let me give you the actual sequence. Step 1, legal structure first, always, before you move a single dollar. Qualifying residency in your secondary jurisdiction, legal holding entity, trust, foundation, or LLC in your storage jurisdiction. Timeline, 60 to 180 days. Legal fees are a fraction of what you lose trying to move without the structure. Start this step today. Step 2, banking architecture. Open accounts in your operational and corridor jurisdictions. Compliance requirements have tightened significantly. Budget 30 to 90 days for establishment. Work with a licensed international fiduciary. This is not a DIY step. Step 3, phase the asset repositioning. Structure tranches over 18 to 36 months with full documentation and home jurisdiction tax reporting for each movement. Gradual, documented repositioning is legal, defensible, and invisible to the pattern detection systems that sudden moves trigger. Now, the red flags. These are the specific signals that mean the preparation phase is over. Watch for emergency legislation restricting individual foreign currency purchases. Watch for pension legislation mandating allocation to domestic government bonds. Watch for international wire transfer thresholds dropping from $10,000 to $3,000, from $3,000 to $1,000. Watch for the word solidarity in tax reform language. That word has preceded a wealth levy in at least 4 major economies in the last 20 years. These signals typically precede formal capital controls by 12 to 24 months. The architects who see them act. The followers who wait for certainty find the window closed. Here's what I want to leave in the middle of your chest before we finish. Financial freedom, real multi-generational financial freedom, is not about picking the right asset. It is about designing a structure that no single government, no single crisis, and no single policy decision can fully compromise.
That is not a luxury for billionaires. The 5-step sequence I just gave you is executable at $250,000 in liquid assets. The architecture I described is legal in virtually every jurisdiction on Earth. The red flags are free to monitor. They appear in financial news every single day. What separates the architects from everyone else is not resources. It is the decision to see the world as it actually is and build accordingly. Here is where I want to leave you. The global system is not collapsing, but it is restructuring. And in every major restructuring in financial history, every shift in how capital moves, how governments manage it, and how individuals protect it, the outcome for any given family came down to one question. Did they act before the architecture changed or after? I opened this video with Cyprus, Canada, 7 governments writing legislation right now. I want to close with something personal. The people those events happened to were not foolish. They were not financially illiterate. They simply believed their jurisdiction was permanent. They believed the rules they planned around were the rules that would hold. They were wrong. The people who had a liquidity shield in place when those events happened accessed their capital. The people who didn't waited. Some are still waiting. Which of the 5 layers we covered today, the legal structure, the liquidity shield, the jurisdiction map, the instrument layer, or the execution sequence, is the one you feel furthest behind on? Tell me in the comments, because your answer is exactly what I build next. Before you close this tab, do one thing right now. In the next 10 minutes, go to your country's foreign residency or second domicile information page and read what's required to establish legal standing abroad. Just read. 30 minutes. That is the beginning of step 1. On the next video, I'm going deep into a structure that almost no one at the sub-$10 million level knows how to use, the Cook Islands LLC Trust Hybrid, and exactly how it stops a domestic court order cold, legally, and permanently. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. That one goes live this week. We don't follow the market. We design the moat. In a world of followers, we are the architects of our own freedom. I'm Dr. Ben. This is Wealth Forge, and I'll see you in the next build.